We open the meeting with a karakia, please.
Kia ora koutou. Tū taua mai I runga, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa. Homie huie, tae kie.
Kia ora. So apologies today. We have apology for Anne Galloway, possibly Aaron Kewen for lateness, and Celeste, maybe Donovan, maybe an early departure. So I'm happy to move those apologies, seconded by Wave. There's Andrew Turner. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's carried. Right. Confirmation. Just reminding you of any declarations of interest, please. So if anything to declare it now, or any time during the meeting is fine. Item 3, confirmation of previous minutes. Do I have a mover? Tim, and seconded by Jimmy. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Wave. Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Now, this morning we have a public forum from Vicky Walker. So, Vicky, are you on board? I think I saw you. There you are. So, welcome, Vicky. And your time starts now, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I've written something out, so if I get emotional, I can sort of send it to you rather than read it. But anyway, here we go. Wastewater poo, toxic smell. Whilst this is about me today, there are so many on this side of town suffering and miserable with the smell. I've lived, worked and brought up my children and grandchildren in Bromley for over 24 years. I've been battling along with others in my community from the smell from the compost plant to be sorted for years now. Yet just as that looks like we might be getting resolution, we have the fire at the wastewater plant. I feel like I live in a third world country that doesn't give people's health priority. We deserve clean air to breathe. In my own community, we have put up with earthquakes, massacres, and now COVID. My mental and physical health is poor. I work hard. I can't nurture myself with a walk after work, or go into my garden, or open my house, my home, my community. I can't breathe fresh air. I can't invite friends over because I don't know if the toxic stench will be there, and it's very embarrassing. My enjoyment of life has been eroded. Now I live daily with this horrendous, foul, toxic stench from this wastewater plant. Last night, after a long, busy day, I came home to a wall of toxic stench. Greeted me at my door when I opened it. I tried to make dinner and eat my dinner with my husband the best I could. My stomach churned and I felt nauseous from the toxic smell. I'm having headaches constantly, which I've never, ever had in my life before. I'm feeling constantly exhausted, and I put it down to the smell. We are born with a sense of smell for a reason. It's to alert us to danger. When I smell this smell, my body goes into overdrive and my adrenal hits, just to alert me things aren't right. My adrenaline is in flight, and when I constantly have to push open my windows or close them, turn off or on my HRV, bring my clothes in off the line, it's a very unhealthy way to live, and I'm exhausted from it, absolutely exhausted. I use my dryer to dry my clothes, as I don't trust the smell not to permeate my clothes if I hang them on the line. I've never used my dryer as much as I have in the last 5 months. I feel like the toxic smell permeates every cell in my body, and I try to use other smells to camouflage it or neutralise it, but it doesn't work. I end up gagging. I'm woken. We are woken by the smell. It often makes me feel like vomiting and I can't get back to sleep. Like I said, this pays a toll on my physical and mental health. I feel stuck and trapped here. I can't sell my home for what it's worth. Who would want to buy it with the smell? To escape, I am lucky I have a car and I can get in it and travel and go for a walk on Sumner Beach or Red Cliffs close by. My neighbour is not so lucky. She is disabled and rides a mobility scooter. She is trapped, like so many are. I try to console her best I can, but it's not easy. and there are many people on the east side of Christchurch, we feel miserable. Previously, this wastewater plant posed no problem until the fire. We deserve respect and to be listened to. Each and every one of you were elected to this council to take care of the needs of Christchurch. You are responsible to take care of the people of Christchurch, to take care of mine and their health. But first and foremost, I need to have this toxic smell sorted. I need to have a daily update, a step of the process that's happening, so that we're informed and we can feel supported. I need to be able to plan so we're not exposed to it, whilst I understand it won't be fixed immediately. I want you to consult with me or us, please, so we feel heard and respected. Perhaps some tickets to the hot pools on the New Brighton Beach might be able to ease some of the stress and some fresh air from the sea for some of us. Some respite for those disabled and trapped, not able to get to the hot pools. I just don't know. But I'd ask you to do your job wisely, to listen to me, because it's not just me, it's everyone on this side. If you look at the Facebook pages, it's many, many people affected by this. And please hurry up and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you very much for that. I know that's been hard for you to talk about that, and we can all see how emotional this has made you in the struggle that you're going through. And it is a tragedy that's following the organics processing plant that you've suffered through for so long. Look, I'm going to make the unusual step of asking a staff member, I think it's Helen Beaumont, just to make a couple of comments in response to your public forum. We've taken on board your comments about what you require and more better comms and possibly something to ease the pain. We can take that offline, but I will ask Helen to just respond very briefly to you that might help you with some information. And elected members, I won't be taking questions on this as it's public forum, but we'll take it offline. So Helen, go ahead, please.
Thanks very much. And first of all, a heartfelt apology from staff for the persistent odours from the wastewater treatment plant. It has been a real struggle following the fire to get on top of the odours from various sources. And as you know, immediately after the fire, it was very bad indeed in the local area and across the whole of the city. So we are slowly getting on top of the treatment process. And we're also doing some interim works to improve the processing that we've got left at the plant there. I'd like to just make a couple of comments about the odour itself. So the odour is largely due to hydrogen sulfide. So it's got that typical rotten egg smell, which indeed is foul and familiar to anybody who lives near a poorly functioning treatment plant. And familiar, of course, to people who live in Rotorua. And the real issue with hydrogen sulfide is that, as you say, our noses are really good at smelling it, and it's indicative of anaerobic conditions, so no oxygen produces that reduced sulfur, and those compounds, particularly hydrogen sulfide, but other sulfur compounds, as that organic matter decays. So the real issue with the hydrogen sulfide is not so much a health issue and that it's toxic in and of itself. It's just so odorous, and we can detect it at levels 500 times lower than those that would cause any direct health effects. However, I agree that prolonged exposure does cause high levels of anxiety and makes it very difficult to enjoy the outdoor part of your house. So yeah, we take on board the issues
indoor
that you face, yes, and the indoors if it comes in through your windows. So the issue around communications is well made, and we are looking at doing much improved and more frequent communications, and putting together some videos so that we can explain what's happening with the processing at the plant and what improvements are being made week by week, because every week we are working to improve the situation. So yeah, once again, my apologies. And I know that the sort of autumn period with the warm, moist weather conditions and much stiller conditions at night has meant that smell has lingered more than it was when we had the breezier summer conditions. So that has been an added problem for us.
I'm sorry, I forgot. There was one other piece I meant to add to that, but I forgot to put it on the end. Can I please just bring that forward?
Okay, just quickly.
I'm worried about the infrastructure. I'd like to know what the plan is for the infrastructure of the permitting of all these new subdivisions. Where is all that going to, and what the future holds for that plant?
Okay, thank you. I think Helen's got that on board. That can be loaded into the comms.
Thank you.
Goes out. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Vicky. Take care.
Yes.
Thank you for talking to us, and we have listened.
Good.
And thank you, Helen, for that update.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on. I think the next item is there's no deputations, there's no petitions this morning. The minutes reports from the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee and the Waimakariri Water Management Zone Committee. The Waimakariri minutes are now on the hub. Items 7 and 8. Can I have a mover for those two sets of minutes, please? That's Aaron, and seconded Andrew. All those in favour, wave your hands. And anyone opposed? No, that's all good. That's passed. Thank you. And now we move to item 9, which is the Devotionals wastewater options report. The recommendation is that the staff have recommended 2 options to go out for consultation, and we'll be approving that today, all going well. So I'd like to firstly just actually highlight to members that this has been a long piece of work, long time in motion. It's not something that's just arrived. The staff have worked very, very closely with the community and the community working group on this, and I'm sure that they will raise that in their presentations. There's 2 presentations today, one from Mike Burke and one from Michelle. So without further ado, I'll hand over to staff to kick away. Thank you. I think it's Mike first, is it? Yep, Mike.
Good morning. Just to run through the options that we have investigated, we've come down to the 2 that we're recommending. Both involve irrigation to the golf course, and one involves real reuse of the wastewater for irrigating the golf course when the golf course needs irrigation. And the second option that we went through with you at the briefing was to drip irrigate to trees and planted margins on the golf course and some additional land off the golf course. So the recommendation is that we go forward with those 2 options to public consultation. There's been a lot of community input to this, particularly from the golf club, the pony club, the A&P Association out there, and of course Anuku Runanga through all of this. So there seems to be very good community support for both options, going to the golf course and leaving the golf course as 18 holes. We did look hard at 12-hole options that didn't in the end find favour with the golf club, but the community seems to be very well on board with the reuse option onto the golf course as well. So it's really a case of, does the council agree with the options we're recommending for consultation? This table shows the options, the 2 green options that we're recommending. There are 5 other orange options there that could be added as well. We don't necessarily see the need or the desirability of those to be added in, and there's 4 options there that we wouldn't recommend for going to public consultation. we think that the best option would be to go forward with two of them. The trade-off with one is more expensive with the reuse of the wastewater. The cheaper option is to drip irrigate to trees. So there's a trade-off there between the reuse and the drip irrigation, which is the second one. These are the other options that we've worked through, and this one is the drip irrigation to trees on the golf course, leaving the course pretty much as it is. Some drainage improvements are necessary for this, and also to add some additional land to the irrigation near the golf course, some additional private land. And consultation and discussion with that landowner in a good space, and he's quite keen to have native trees planted on part of his property and for us to irrigate onto that land. This is the one of the options that we looked at was the 12-hole option on the golf course. In the end, the golf club have reverted back to wanting to keep the 18-hole option. It's quite a bit more expensive as well, so not fully recommended. B3 is the option that we would put to council as a possibility, but we're not recommending that this be go forward for public consultation.
But B1, you mean you're not putting forward for public consultation?
That's correct. Yeah. So it's A4 and B3 are the two we're recommending. Yeah. Yep. I know councillors expressed some concern about the time frames for this, but even with the two options going forward, I think we can manage this quite quickly to have it resolved prior to the end of the current council term. So this is the indicative timeline we're looking at. We could be close to finishing the public consultation by the end of May. If hearing is necessary, that could happen in as early as June, possibly, so we could be well through it before the end of the council term.
Thank you, Mike. Look, I'll just pause it there. I want to table two items. One is a letter we received from the chair of Onuku Marae, that's Rick Tainui. I'd like to table that. And also I'd like to table the Devotionals Wastewater Strategic Approach memo that should also be attached to the agenda. So please note that. Now I'll open it up for questions. If I can get the screen reduced because I can't see anybody on here at the moment. Please, that's better, thank you. Right, any questions for Mike? Does not appear to be any questions. Oh, Leanne.
Sorry, I was struggling to find my hand. Just two questions, just to run me through, I guess in this forum, the benefits of reuse versus drip irrigation, because I presume that the golf course will still require irrigation, and I think there's a stream that they use for that purpose. But from a conservation point of view, you think reuse has got a better ring to it. So can you just work through those two things? And the other one was that both A4 and B3, both of them allow the Devotional AMP show to continue to be held in its present location. I know that this is of great interest, having attended many of the Devotional AMP shows. I'm aware of the public interest in that matter, so I'd like that stated for the record as well.
Yes, you're right on the mark, Leanne. The key benefit of the reuse option is that it significantly reduces the take from the stream that the golf course used during the summertime, in particular. So that leaves water in the stream that gets very low, like many of the streams on the peninsula, through the dry periods in summer. So really we're providing more water than what they would normally be able to take from the stream for this irrigation. So stream health is enhanced by this whole thing. And yes, the other issues where we looked at options that did involve the A&P showgrounds and the area where the Pony Club use for storage and wetlands did mean we would have had to shift the showgrounds off the site to a new site somewhere, and that not having to do that is a big plus in terms of the A&P Association and the Pony Club.
Sorry, and I did have one other time, that the decision-making time frame, I would be worried if it went into September because of all the challenges there, and we're changing the structure with a report that's coming to council tomorrow, which will give two council meetings in August, so we won't be using committees of the whole after July. So I think it would be really important to signal that has to be a decision made, within the time frame before major decisions are made. And that's my encouragement, is to make sure that timetable is able to be addressed within the timescale. I would be really unhappy for it to go, a month before the election.
That's well understood.
Thanks, Leanne. I've just had a message that your hand is up, Phil. Is it?
Yep. Is it?
No.
Yeah, you're there.
It's
You're
not
there,
up on
Pauline?
my screen. Yes.
I'm in the chamber. That's why you can't see me. Sorry. Well, maybe you can.
Yeah.
Mike, a question. We've got to put the consent for discharging into the harbour in Devotionals runs out in early 23. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we put in this proposal and we asked for a resource consent extension for how long for putting waste out into the harbour, please?
Probably 4 to 5 years is what we will ask for by the time we consent this new system and build it.
Yeah, and is that
we won't get a consent for longer than 5, I don't think.
Okay? And we're already in that period of time for the Akarawa one at the moment, aren't we?
Yes.
And also, just one other question: we spend about, from what I'm led to believe, about $90,000 a year trucking water from Akarawa to Devotionals because they haven't got enough drinking water there at the moment.
It's not a case of quantity, it's a case of being able to treat it during high turbidity times in the stream. And yes, we have been trucking water from Akarawa to Devotional.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Tim?
Thank you, Pauline. I might just to double check and just get that I'm got this correct. The proposals that you're recommending to go out are in line with the letter from Rick Tainui with regards to Anuku Runanga. Is that correct? Which I thought was a very good letter, so thank you very much. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. Exactly in line with what Rick was saying.
Right, thank you, Pauline. I'm happy to move this if you'd like. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Tim. If there's no other questions, I think we'll move on to the second. We might as well get a seconder while we're at it. That's Mike. Right. So thank you. It's moved and seconded, Tim and Mike. And we'll move through to the second presentation. Please, Michelle, welcome.
Thank you. So we've prepared this presentation to address really item 1.3 of the devotional report, where it was highlighted that staff have been asked to investigate a proposal to dispose of both Akarua and Devotional treated wastewater to an infiltration gallery at Birdling's Flat. Staff were also requested to consider whether there would be benefits to combine the Devotional and Akarua water and wastewater treatment schemes. So both the Akarua and Devotional projects are in the design stage. and consultation has been completed for Akarua. We are hoping to go out to consultation for Devotional after this meeting, as we've just indicated. The objective of these projects is to discontinue the disposal of treated wastewater into the Akarua harbour, also in a sustainable way, and this is 100% aligned with our integrated water strategy. We would like to highlight at this point that before the project briefs were finalised for these two projects, that several possible solutions were considered, including to pump treated wastewater to beyond Little River and even up to Christchurch. But candidates with pump distances of more than 15 kilometres were just much more expensive than the local solutions. And these candidates also introduced many consenting challenges associated with mixing water between catchments and discharging into watersheds with known nutrient problems. I would like to refer you to the memo that was distributed regarding the strategic approach and specifically the EV management plan policies. Only viable solutions were therefore taken forward to the concept design stages for the projects. As noted, we were requested to revisit the adopted land irrigation option for Akarua, and I will go through the proposals in the next slide. First of all, the Akarua and Devotional projects briefs are outlined in this schematic and represents the status quo. The Akarua project will include a new wastewater treatment plant and irrigation to land up to Robinson's Bay. Devotional will require an upgrade to the wastewater treatment plant with irrigation to land as outlined in the options presented to you by Mike. Note that the project briefs do not currently provide for the wastewater servicing of Takamatua towards Akarua, nor for providing water into the Robinson's Bay Valley Road. But we have considered these options as part of our net present value analysis. So the table on this slide represents a 50-year net present value analysis of the status quo or of the project briefs as they stand, where both capital and operating costs have been quantified over a 50-year life period. The shared irrigation option was also considered as part of the Devotional options analysis. So I won't explain it further here, except again to highlight that this option is more costly than the status quo. And as mentioned in our report and presentation, it is not favoured by the local community. The next proposal which we were asked to look at was to consider combining the Devotional and the Akarua wastewater treatment plants into one facility. This would mean that raw wastewater would have to be pumped from Devotional to Akarua, but in this case, we would still require for treated wastewater to be transported back to the Devotional golf course, as we would need additional irrigation land. Again, this proposal comes with a higher net present value cost because really the operational cost savings for combining the two treatment plants are outweighed by the higher capital costs. We also believe that this option will result in less wastewater treatment resilience. Considering that wastewater treatment could potentially have been combined, the next proposal was to look at where the water treatment facility should be combined for Akarua and Devotional. That would mean that raw water would have to be sent from Devotional to Akarua, and that drinking water is then linked back. Still, again, this proposal does not provide sufficient operational cost benefits. We were then also asked to consider pumping treated wastewater to Birdlings Flat to be discharged into a gravel infiltration gallery. Because of the high lift needed over the summit, this option will pose quite a few technical challenges, including the introduction of pressure brake tanks beyond the summit. However, should a future wastewater scheme be established for Little River and or for Birdlings Flat, this could then also be discharged to the infiltration gallery. But we will still require to have individual wastewater treatment plants or a combined treatment plant. This option does not align with the EV management policies, and it also does not represent an environmental reuse of treated wastewater. It was then also stated that once a pipe has been established to Birdlings Flat, that the same trench could be used to send raw water back to Akarua. Assuming that this would be technically acceptable, this would require the development of more bores in Birdlings Flat, and once again, one would need to provide a high-pressure, high-lift pump station to get the water over the summit. The net present value calculations for the previous two options confirm that they are just much more costly, even and especially if one considers the unit net present value costs. So given the above, we are satisfied to confirm that the scope of Akarua and Devotional projects as it is correct, because it presents the best total cost of ownership and meets not only the objectives of the integrated water strategy, but also aligns with the policies of the EV management plan. The status quo has also been agreed to after a very lengthy consultation process with the key stakeholders. To finish off, we would like to conclude that the issue about water security in Banks Peninsula, what we believe is one of the drivers for considering these additional proposals, will indeed be further investigated and addressed in a future Banks Peninsula servicing strategy. The initial indications, however, remain that regionalisation will not necessarily lead to increased affordability. And the principles and assumptions that we intend to take forward are that water demand management must first be rigorously pursued, also that more emphasis should be placed on rainwater storage for gardening purposes. We will then also want to pursue the non-potable reuse of treated wastewater. We will continue to investigate the desalination costs and implications. And the absolute last resort would be for us to reuse treated wastewater as a raw water source. Thank you. That is the end of my slides.
Thank you, Michelle. That's very helpful. Right, open up for questions. Andrew.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the two presentations, very informative. I've got three questions relating mainly to the second of the two presentations. When you say that you were asked to look at these additional proposals, who made that request and through what channel?
Obviously, the request had come through our management, but it was made by Councillor, one of the councillors, Councillor Major, to our project team. We had a briefing meeting with management with Councillor Major.
So it came directly from Councillor Major to the project team?
I believe it did go through management. I think Jane is she will be able to help me on that.
Yeah, that's correct. I can confirm that, so Councillor Major talked to us and wanted to put this option on the table for the project team to consider.
All right, thank you. Second question, how much time has been spent, how much staff time has been spent on investigating these alternative proposals that you were asked to look at in that way?
I know our project manager for the Akarua wastewater treatment project, Kylie Hills, spent quite a bit of time to quantify and to cost the different options, so upwards of 3 days. I then also did spend time to put together net present value calculations, probably the same, although my time was a bit more of after our time.
So maybe about 6 days of staff time all up?
Yep. All
right, and final question, was it reasonably obvious from the outset, given the amount of work that's been done on both Akarawa and Devotionals to date, that none of these additional proposals was likely to be able to be consented or was likely to be able to be implemented cost effectively or would be able to meet cultural expectations? Was it reasonably obvious from the outset that that would be the case?
As I noted, several options were considered as part of the planning phases even before the two projects were put into the long-term plan. So a lot of this work has previously been done. But I mean, that is a few years ago. So it was, yeah. It was considered previously by the planning teams and the project teams to confirm it again in terms of net present value is what we decided to do this time.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you. I guess where you're coming from, Andrew, it is unusual to take direction from one councillor when it's not an actual formal council resolution. So now apparently, Phil, you've got your hand up again. This is very difficult for me. I can't. Your hand doesn't come up on my screen.
That's fine. Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have come in here.
And then Sam, I can see you. So go, Phil.
This is an absolutely fantastic report, and it's very clear, and it shows the figures, and I commend Kylie for doing it. But Andrew asked a question of, just remind me, was it about a week that Kylie spent doing this?
3 days, I think she said.
Okay.
Yeah, I've estimated about 3 full days, Councillor Major.
Yeah, that's cool. But in the scheme of things, what's been spent on time-wise by staff is years of work, would you say? If you bring Akarawa into it as well.
Indeed, a lot of time has been spent on planning and on before the projects even became a deliverable project. Considerable time was spent on not just staff but external consultants on the planning basis.
Okay, no, that's perfect. And none of the two proposals we've got with Akarawa and or the Devotionals one, they're wastewater only. They don't bring into account any water supply, do they?
No, the existing projects do not consider combining water.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil. Sam?
Oh, it was just a question for Jane if she's online.
Yeah, I'm online.
Oh, great. Well, I'm just trying to understand this. So are we now not, just based on Andrew's comments, I'm trying to understand if we now aren't taking suggestions from councillors for practical solutions?
Well, given the history of this particular project, it is a little bit unusual that we would at the last minute take on a suggestion from an elected member. So we've got a lot of professional staff in our organisation who have been working on this alongside consultants. In this case, Phil was quite clear that this was, in his view, a practical solution that, in his view, was going to be more cost effective for the community, while the officer's advice was it wasn't. I felt that it was important that the officers went through the process of analysing this option before you made a final decision on your preferences, because in Phil's view, this was an obvious and simple solution.
Thank you for doing that. I'd just be worried if we were going to hide behind process and not look for practical solutions. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I think I'd really rather not get too hung up on that. I think staff have stepped up really well to actually give us even more information on the alternative, we should call it the alternative proposal at the 11th hour, and they've done very well to do that. And I think in the greater scheme of things, it's not a huge amount of time compared to the amount of time, years and years and years of time that's gone into both of these projects, and community time as well. I can't see any other hands up. No more questions. So this has been moved, remind me, Tim and Mike, I think, and seconded. Is there any debate?
Yeah, you there, Pauline?
Yes.
Yep.
Phil and then Andrew.
Yeah, no worries. The peninsula is a unique area with lots of little different wastewater treatment plants here and there, and wastewater problems and water problems going forward. But I've got nothing against what the hearings panel and the councillors did for the Akarawa one. That they just made their decision on what was put in front of them, and I commend them for that. That's really good. But estimated to spend 75 million on the Akarawa system going to Robinson's Bay, and we're estimating spending 14 odd million on the Devotionals one going up to the golf course. But there is zero money for Little River, and that's going into Lake Forsyth, and I dare say that's going to happen one day. There's zero allowed for any of water for any of these Akarawa Devotionals or Little River for that matter. And as I said before, we're spending 90,000 a year carting water from Akarawa to Devotionals. On top of this, we're also throwing an upgrade into the Akarawa water system. And next thing you know, we'll be upgrading Devotionals, we'll be upgrading Little River as well. So why not solve the whole problem at once and lay two pipes in the same trench? I know it's going to cost a bit more, but globally and looking at the whole picture, we'll be able to solve a whole lot of things over a period of time. I'm just saying, bring it all through to Devotionals at this stage, continue to pump it out into the harbour while we've got the consent to do it, and in the meantime, design going over the hill with sewer and water coming back all the way to the Birdlings Flat, and I think it'll be a better outcome in the long run. It's not a quick fix. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I mean, Phil's absolutely right on one thing here. The peninsula does have huge challenges with drinking water and wastewater in particular, and other infrastructure. And that's because of its environment, it's because of its remoteness, and actually it's also because of underinvestment in previous times. The Banks Peninsula District Council and the councils that came together to make up that district had a small population and had a huge amount of capital expenditure required to keep these drinking water schemes and wastewater schemes up to scratch or to implement them in the first place. It's fair to say that a lot of the work that we're doing on the Akarawa wastewater scheme, that we've done with the Littleton wastewater, and that we're looking at here in Devotionals, is as a result of that intergenerational underinvestment by those previous councils. But a huge amount of this, both in Devotionals and Akarawa, has been done over many years. The thinking on both of these and some of the work on both of these schemes predate my time as an elected member, and the thinking around them has been going on for some time. I think it's great that we've got a solution that doesn't involve changing the golf course at Devotionals, which is a great asset for that community and the wider Banks Peninsula community and beyond. I think it's great that we've got two options in front of us that appear to largely be supported by the community, given the recent history with the Akarawa scheme. And, you know, I'm just mindful of the huge amount of work that the hearings panel on Akarawa did in the face of significant community opposition to some of the options that were being put forward. It's great in the light of that recent history that we've now got something here which appears to be largely supported by the community. So I do thank staff for the work that they've done, but it does concern me that a request by one councillor can result in at least 6 days of additional time being spent. These were clearly not practical options. They clearly weren't going to meet cultural values, and they clearly weren't going to be cost effective. And if we all behaved in that way, we could all cause huge additional expense and a huge amount of work for the organisation. And I think, you know, the way that this has been handled, whilst I understand the reasons it's worked out that way, in some ways sets a very dangerous precedent around the use of staff time. So I'm happy with what's in front of us today, certainly very happy to support the two options going out to consultation. I look forward to hearing the community views, and I look forward to progressing this to decision making as soon as possible.
Thanks, Andrew. Does anybody else want to speak to this? If not, I will close it, and I would like to particularly recognise Mike Burke again, along with all the... Oh, sorry, hang on. We have got hands up. I will wait. Leanne and then Aaron.
Sorry, I was trying to put my hand up.
Leanne, you're a Dalek. I'm sorry.
I'll come back.
We'll go to Aaron while we're waiting. Aaron?
Yeah, I do take a wee bit of exception to some of the stuff Andrew's said, because they're almost like allegations. I think it's important when you have elected members on council that have a reasonable understanding of particular subjects, that they raise them and thrash out all potential options. To sit, but like, what's even the value of having elected members that don't ask questions that can go beyond the level of just reading a report? Otherwise, why even vote? Might as well just get the staff to run the entire council. So I think there is value in it, and given the entire time frame of this, it's not unreasonable to ask some of the questions that have been asked and to play the longer game. The irony is, Andrew, that you raised the underinvestment by multiple councils, and yet you're probably now going to vote on underinvesting in the bigger picture longer term. So that's a bit of a shame. But although I do like a number of the items that I see in here, is this the ultimate best solution for the area and for Akarawa going forward? And I also have concerns over the trucking of the water at the moment at $90,000 a year. Having talked to one of our former suppliers of our wells, I know that that's about 3 years worth of water. You'd have a brand new bore installed pumping fresh water in Devotional. So, yeah, I like those questions being asked.
Thanks, Erin. Leanne, you're back?
Yeah, does that work okay?
Yes, beautiful.
Great, thank you. Listen, I did try to put up my hand so that I could just simply acknowledge the significance of the letter that came in from Rick Toe, from Rick Tainui, sorry, from the from Onuku Marae, and his acknowledgement of the extent of engagement that staff have undertaken with respect to this significant decision that we make today, which is the beginning of the formal decision-making process, which kicks off a consultation with our community. Two options are being narrowed down to, and both of those options would be supported by the local community, as is clear. I personally think that the option that makes more sense, and I actually would be happy for us to consult on the preferred option, which would see the golf course being irrigated. And the advantage of that would be the benefits to the stream. And I think when you think of Te Mana o Te Wai and the significance of that principle, then that is something that we should be thinking about all the time. What I didn't like about the report was really just I think the inadequacy of the impact on mana whenua statement, although this time it does talk about the Mahananui iwi management plan and Te Wai Ora o Tāne integrated water strategy. And I just noted it's correctly spelt in the paper, but wasn't in the presentation. And I think it's important that we acknowledge the significance of that. But I don't know that councillors did, and so I'm so pleased to the chair that you tabled the Mahananui iwi management plan strategic overview document that came from staff by way of an update. It's so important that councillors understand that we have not just a moral obligation, but we have legal obligations in terms of the expression of kaitiakitanga and rangatiratanga, and which is why there can't be the consideration of the wider option going in at this late stage. But look, I think that as long as councillors are really clear around why Māori and why that is such an important issue for all of these kinds of decisions that we make, then I think that we're on good ground. So I really appreciate all the work that everyone's put into this, and I think that the usefulness of staff providing advice on the options that Phil Major put forward is that you wouldn't put drinking water pipes and wastewater pipes in the same hole. It's not a good idea, especially in a seismic environment. So I think that although it sounds good, it's great to be able to hear from staff about what the challenges would be. Thank you.
Thanks, Leanne. Well, I'll briefly speak and then I'll leave it to Tim to close it as the mover if you want to, Tim. But yeah, it's very much support Leanne's comments there. It's not culturally really acceptable to distribute wastewater from one runanga into another, unless, particularly if there are other options. So that's one biggie for me, and these other options do exist and they're very, very good options. And particularly when you take into account, as Michelle was saying, that the length of pipes to run it out to Kaitariti or Birdling's Flat does create a resilience issue, which we know all about that as the Mayor referred to. So for me, there's the alternative option that was raised by Phil is not really a workable one. But as I began to say before, and also the fact that, yes, we could extend the consent out, but doesn't mean that we should go longer than we have to. Let's get this done as quickly as we can, because the consent just doesn't dictate our behaviour if we can do things quicker and respect our partners. And Mike Burke, I just want to thank you again and recognise the fact that you're very well known over there now on the peninsula with all the close work you've done with the community and Onuku and iwi there, and you're very well respected. You get on very well with people, and you've run this brilliantly as well. And all the staff that have been involved in this as well need recognition. It's been a hefty piece of work, very hefty. And I'd also want to refer to Helen Beaumont's comments too, that a regional option is not always better. So this is a more of a contained two projects here, which are going to work very well, and the reports are very detailed and give us good information. So I'll be supporting the recommendation to go out to consultation with A4 and B3 today. Thank you. Over to Tim.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to say thank you to staff, Mike and your team. It's been a huge amount of work. And in the paper, it is very technical. And what I really liked was Rick Tainui and the letter that he sent on behalf of the Onuku Runanga with regards to the community, and not just one community, but the many effects on the group of communities that make up the area, and the respectfulness which it was written and complimented our staff, but also highlighted the concerns and the positive side of the results that this would gain for the community. So thank you very much for that, and thank you again to staff. And that's it for me. Thank you, Pauline.
Thanks, Tim. So on that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please wave at me. Thank you. And opposed? That's Aaron, Sam, Phil.
Can we take a division on that, please?
You want division?
Please.
Is that you, Megan?
The Mayor.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Turner.
Aye.
Councillor Chen.
Aye.
Councillor Chu.
Aye.
Councillor Coker.
Yes.
Councillor Cotter.
Aye.
Councillor Donovan.
Aye.
Councillor Davidson.
Aye.
Councillor Galloway. She's not here. Councillor Goff.
No.
Councillor Johansson.
Aye.
Councillor Keown.
No.
Councillor McDonald.
No.
Councillor Major.
No.
Councillor McClellan.
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett.
Aye.
And Councillor Templeton.
Aye.
That's 12 ayes and 4 noes.
Thank you. That's carried. Right, we'll move on to item 10, the resource recovery by monthly report for January and February. And I think we've got Ross Trotter. Thank you, Ross. I'll leave it to you to introduce the item, and then we'll open it up for any questions.
So we don't have
Thank
Ross
you,
here.
Chair.
We've got Rowan leading this.
No, I'm online. If you can hear me.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. The resource recovery bi-monthly report for January, February. The key points in this report, number one is the curbside collections. They have been steady over this period with the volumes. We're still seeing slightly higher than average organics material coming through. That's due to the wetter and the longer than usual summer season, although it is just starting to taper off now. We have seen impacts of the COVID-19 cases with the collection truck driver availability. We have introduced a number of measures already to make sure that the collections continue as much as possible uninterrupted, which we have been able to achieve. We've only had to work the one Saturday, so we've extended the collection hours and also reduced some of the non-essential services performed by the contractor, which things like non-essential bin repairs. We've also been able to reduce the traffic restrictions, and that allows trucks to collect on certain roads for a longer period, which has been enabled, but there's been fewer vehicles on the road, which has allowed this to take place. We've also monitoring on a daily basis our processing facilities, so the materials recovery facility where your yellow wheelie bin goes. Also very, very affected by COVID, with up to 35% of their staff away. So we're monitoring that on a day-to-day basis to ensure that processing facility can remain operating. Moving on to the organics processing plant, we have an options report on the future of the organics project that's been deferred until the 28th of April. That's to allow us more time to ensure all options are fully assessed before presenting to council. That report will be in the public, noting that some of the commercially sensitive information in the independent investigation report and feasibility report will be redacted. The Bonds Bay works on the removal material to Cape Valley is continuing. There's been a lot more volume discovered in the landfill. It was originally estimated 3,600 tonnes, and we are now estimating about 6,500 tonnes, so significantly more. The initial scoping and assessment was, in terms of the area, was pretty much right. What we've found is there's been pockets or pits, if you like, of material which is quite deep, which has added to the volume. So we're taking that on board for assessment of other works, other landfill work that we have coming up, and looking at factoring in a larger contingency for the worst case scenarios, because we really just don't know what we're going to find once we start digging. Unfortunately, it's not a gold mine where the more you dig, the better it is. The more you dig and the more you find, the worse it is. We've got a consultation document out from central government on transforming recycling in Aotearoa. So this consultation opened on the 13th of March through to the 8th of May. Three main areas in the proposal. One is a container return scheme that incentivises the return of empty beverage containers for recycling. The second key proposal is around improvements to curbside recycling, and that includes a proposal to standardise the materials which go into your recycling bins across New Zealand, just to avoid some of the confusion that may be from different TAs having different rules. And the third one is the separation of scrap food material from the general waste, and that's for all businesses, all commercial businesses. So we're putting together a council submission on that. That's important consultation, and also there'll be a submission from the Canterbury Mayoral Forum as well. Happy to take any questions. I think Rowan's in the chambers there. I've got some of my team on online as well. Thank you.
Is it right if I ask a question, Pauline?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, you can in a minute. Ross, when you talked about standardising curbside recycling, and you talked about it's a question of standardising so people know what goes in what bin quite clearly across the country. Is that going to also be standardising colours of bins?
Yeah, there's already been some work done on that, and there is agreement on what colour lids should be for what items. So that is already an agreed standard. So yeah, that will definitely form part of any new work that's done by central government.
So does that mean that we could be looking at changing the colours of our lids?
No, we are consistent with what the standard is. So no, we won't be having to change the colour of our lids.
Oh, that's interesting. That's good. Okay, so now was that you, Phil?
Yeah. Thanks, Ross, for that. Just
Phil and then Jimmy. Yep.
Sorry. Thanks, Ross. Just a question. As far as picking up bins and how sometimes we have people who are not getting them picked up at the right time. Did I hear that we're encouraging people to perhaps, you don't have to put your bin out every week if it's not full? Don't think for a minute that I'm thinking red bins. I'm just thinking the yellow ones and the green ones. They don't have to go out because some people will be thinking, oh, if it's only quarter full, I have to put it out. But are we encouraging people to, on say green or yellow, to make sure it's a bit fuller, because every time a truck picks up a quarter of a bin, it's taking the same amount of time as a full bin? You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I probably should have mentioned that in one of our measures to relieve pressure off the drivers, is that we have put communications out exactly along those lines that if your bin isn't full and you can hold off to the next collection cycle, then if you could not put it out till then. And that's really to ensure that the driver resource that the contractor has is being the most efficient as we can. So in other words, we're able to get around as many collections as we can. And if the bin's not full, then and you can hold on to the next collection, just pop it out the next collection cycle.
Thank you, Ross.
That's great. Jimmy, then Yanni.
Okay, yeah, just quickly, two questions. The first one regarding to a curbside collection. Based on the staff, the kind of discussion with those contractors, particularly regarding to some of the further measurement. One of the bullet point is request the residents hold of the presenting the bins if less than half full of, and they can wait until next collection. Because quite a few the residents, my area particular emphasize, they pay the rates, also particularly regarding to those red bin, if less than half, maybe they need to waiting for another 2 weeks, probably there the bin, the volume is not sufficient. They still have this concern. I'm not sure how to mitigate this effect.
Yeah, look, it really is messaging and around it is the impact of COVID. We understand that people have paid for that service and are entitled to that service. And we're not saying don't do it. We're just saying that if you are in a position where you feel that you can hold off putting off your bin, that would be greatly appreciated at this time to ensure that we can, obviously the real focus on us is to ensure that in particular rubbish is taken away in a timely manner. So that is the message, that if you can, great. If you don't want to or you can't, you're entitled to put your bin out.
Okay, thank you. Second question is, yeah. Second question is regarding the organic separation plant, because this not only, in the probably in East, the issue, but it's the citywide issue, particularly in the Southwest area, because still the, my area, the community resident pretty concerned if there is the option to shift to the Southwest area. So whether this the meeting, particular until 28 April, probably I think is the finance and the performance committee meeting, whether it's open the meeting, because the people community particularly concerned this issue, or it's a PX meeting.
No, the main report will be in the public, and there will be an attached an independent report on the investigation feasibility, which may have some of the commercially sensitive information redacted out of it. But the main report will be in the public.
Okay, so you mean the main report, the location, possible location or favorite location will be defined clearly in which location. Am I right?
That'll come through in the report on the 28th, Councillor.
Yeah, that's an open meeting.
Yes, it will be an open meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yanni.
Thank you. I just wanted to check two things. One is, how is the app going in terms of notifying people if their bin collection's been missed? But is there a way that people can be told, the contractor hasn't been down this street?
Yeah, absolutely. It can work in areas, so we can target. We know what routes ahead of time are likely to be, if they're affected by not being able to be collected. The contractor leaves the organics to last because that's probably the least impacted, and that would be endeavoured to be picked up the next day. But yeah, we can push that messaging out through the app.
Have we been doing that? It's just that I've seen on some of the social media and some of the local residents groups that people are getting quite confused over when the collection's coming and when it's not.
Yeah, look, of late we haven't had to change the collections or miss due to the driver restrictions. So we haven't.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
we haven't been putting too much messaging out. If we are in doubt, we will go to a wider area than just the area that we don't think will get collected. So hopefully everyone who's on the app will get the messaging.
And obviously the companies being sold that we have contracts with. So obviously we'll just be keeping a watching brief to see what changes. Like, are there any changes that we're aware of that could be as a consequence of that?
Yeah, we've been advised it's business as usual from the contractor. The company that has bought them do have interests in the waste sector, so we see that as potentially being an advantage. But what we've been informed is no staff changes and business as usual.
Right. Okay. And just sorry, the final question is just to confirm, the 28th of April, that date is still fixed.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Thanks, Yanni. I can't see any other questions. No more hands up. So can I have a mover for this report, please? I'd like to move it, Sarah, and seconded by Jimmy. Is there any debate on it or any discussion? No? All right. And thank you, Ross, for the report, and Lynette. And I particularly do like the pictures you always put in these. They're really good. Nice to see what's going on. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye or wave. And anyone opposed? So that is carried. Thank you. Right.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Our final item is item 11, and the implications of the health fluoridation of drinking water fluoridation. So we have a presentation from Michelle. welcome Michelle again.
Just want to get to my slides.
Yep.
Good. So this presentation is really focused on the response that we've given to the Ministry of Health on their specific requests concerning the cost and time frame for introducing fluoride into the Christchurch drinking water. We will provide some legislative context and highlight key aspects of the Amendment Act before we talk about the information request and our response to that request. The Ministry of Health website provides the motivation for the Amendment Act, which is really about the benefits of water fluoridation for the oral health of communities and especially children. It is important to understand where the Fluoridation Amendment Act fits in. Firstly, the Health Act, established in 1956, provides the mandates and responsibilities for the Ministry of Health. Previously, drinking water was regulated as part of the Health Act, but this has now been repealed, and drinking water is legislation in terms of the Water Services Act, which together with the Water Services Regulator Act provides the mandates and responsibilities for the new water services regulator, Taumata Arawai. The purpose of the Fluoridation Amendment Act is to direct a local authority to add or not to add fluoride to drinking water, to reduce the prevalence and severity of dental decay. This is completely separate from the drinking water regulations legislated by the Water Services Act, which has the purpose to ensure that drinking water suppliers provide safe drinking water to consumers. The Amendment Act was enacted in December 2021, and as I noted before, it allows the Director General to direct a local authority to add fluoride or not to add fluoride to its drinking water supply. A local authority must comply with this direction, and the Director General will consider both the scientific evidence as well as the benefits of making sure that the benefits of adding fluoride will outweigh the cost thereof. The direction will be published and will specify the date by which a local authority must comply, as well as the level at which fluoride must be added. According to the Act, the Director General must invite comments from local authorities about the estimated financial cost for adding fluoride, as well as the date by which a local authority will be able to comply with the direction. This is essentially what was asked in a letter to the Mayor and Chief Executive dated 15th of December, and we were given up to the 11th of March to respond to the information request. Once a local authority receives a direction or is invited to comment, as was done on the 15th of December, that local authority is not required to consult on the matter. Lastly, there are several sections in the Act which outlines what will happen if a local authority does not comply with the direction given by the Director General. As referenced in the previous slide, the Director General asked Christchurch for comments on the 15th of December, but there are some key messages in this letter that should be highlighted at this point. First of all, it was noted that directions will be given from mid-2022 onwards, but also that a staged approach may be adopted to align with the water reform process. All local authorities were encouraged to start with fluoridation-related preparatory work, and we need not wait to be directed before starting to add fluoride to our drinking water. It was noted that limited funds are available for those that can start fluoridation before the end of 2022, but also that more information would be provided about this at a later stage. The Director General did recognize or does recognize that fluoridation will be complex for some. We believe he meant us. And then lastly, fluoride need only be added to community water supplies servicing more than 500 people. So for us, this would mean the Christchurch City, as well as Brooklyn's Kainga water supply and Akarua. The information request was sent to 56 local authorities, those that do not currently add fluoride to their drinking water, and comprising about 224 community drinking water supplies. As indicated on the attached map, the white areas that do not currently add fluoride. It is noted by actually the Massey University website that 61% of New Zealanders on registered drinking water supplies have access to fluoridated drinking water, and that people in the North Island are 4 times more likely to have access than people in the South Island. Our response to the Ministry of Health was aligned with the specific questions asked in the letter. Firstly, to confirm that Christchurch does not currently add fluoride to its drinking water, nor do we have any projects underway to add fluoride. The estimated capital cost to add fluoride at 50 locations is in excess of 60 million, and this estimate includes a 30% contingency and a 12% escalation allowance. The long-term plan does not provide for fluoridation at present. We believe that once funding is in place, it will take at least 3.5 years to complete the implementation of fluoridation. We have, however, advised the ministry that a delay of 2 to 4 years should be considered to allow us to complete our water safety projects, and because we cannot work at our pump stations simultaneously. The operating cost impact is expected at more than 2.5 million, being 1.8 million for chemicals, resources, maintenance, and another 1.1 million for depreciation. We have been asked to provide more information on why fluoridation would be so much more expensive for Christchurch. Firstly, the configuration of our water supply system is very different from other cities, where generally you would have 1 or more raw water sources feeding into a single water treatment plant or several water treatment plants. An example of this is Akarua, where we have up to 6 raw water sources feeding into 1 water treatment plant, from where it is then distributed into the network. So in Christchurch, we abstract water direct from the confined aquifers into the network, and we therefore need not to treat the water. Fluoride is normally added as part of the water treatment process. Because our pump stations are not treatment plants, also our command and control systems have not been equipped to monitor and control treatment processes. We would therefore have to provide additional instrumentation and communication equipment to manage the fluoridation process. Also, our pump stations supply water at variable flow rates depending on the demand at any given time. This means that we must continuously match the amount of fluoride dosed into the system with the flow rate out of the pump stations. Conventional treatment plants normally produce water at a more stable rate. Fluoride is added to water in a liquid state through a dosing pump. Because our pump stations are so close to the network, we must introduce additional mixing equipment into the pipes to make sure that the fluoride is adequately mixed before it reaches the first customer. We have to also introduce safety precautions to make sure that the allowed fluoride dosing rate is not exceeded, and this will include special fluoride concentration analyzers downstream of the dosing point. Lastly, the fluoride tanks and equipment must be protected from the environment. It must be kept in a sterile state and must comply with health and safety provisions. This means that the fluoride equipment must be housed in a separate room or building equipped with an air scrubber. We are continuing to investigate the use of different forms of fluoride that could reduce the health and safety requirements, whilst also ensuring that our operators are kept safe when adding fluorides to the storage tanks and when otherwise handling the equipment. The projected implementation period of 3.5 years is because we cannot take our pump stations out of operation during the summer peak demand period. Also, to deliver the demand outside of summer, we need enough pump stations to operate, so we cannot work on all the pump stations simultaneously. The reason we have said that we needed a 2 to 4 year delay is because we are busy implementing the reservoir and section tank repair program. We envisage that this work program will take at least another 4 years to complete. And this work also requires pump stations to be taken offline, specifically when we work on suction tanks. Or it will necessitate a pump station to be operating full-time when we need to take a reservoir offline. This will again mean that we cannot work on these pump stations simultaneously to install fluoridation equipment. There's also the matter of not having enough contractors to undertake all the physical work at once. We are continuing with phase 2 of the concept planning stage, where we will do preliminary designs at 5 specific locations to help us better refine the cost estimate. We expect to get feedback from the Ministry of Health in May 2022. Should we be directed to start fluoridation, we will have to include funding in the next long-term plan, or depending on the direction, we may have to include this in an annual plan change. This will be needed whether or not we receive additional funds from government. Thank you.
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. Your reports are so detailed and clear and easy to follow. They're really lovely. So can I have the screen shifted now so I can see everybody?
That shortly.
And then I will open it up for questions. And just a reminder too that we have not been directed to do so yet, and we have so we're receiving the recommendations to receive this report, but we have cobbled together another couple of resolutions that we'll put up on the screen shortly. So we have questions. Yanni.
Thanks. And thanks for the presentation. Obviously, it's pretty concerning that they don't know much about our water, given how much time and money we've spent on the water safety plan. But I just wanted to check in terms of the consultation. I appreciate that we don't have to consult, but are we able to? I didn't quite get that, the implications of that. Like, could we consult our community over the decision?
I don't know if that's a question for Michelle really, but I think what you'd be talking about would be engagement, because the consultation is fruitless since we are being directed to do this. But we can get strong comms out about it, and we have started to do it already.
It was the consultation. Like in the presentation, there's a slide that says councils do not have to consult.
It's included in the Amendment Act. It actually does state that local authorities need not consult. Again, because it's legislated, it's not up to councils to decide.
Oh, sorry. Let me just put it a different way. I know it says that we do not need to consult, but if we chose to consult, given the massive ramifications this will have on our community, both from a financial point of view and also the issue with the actual decision, could we consult?
Point of order, Madam Chair. Point of order.
Yeah,
I'm always reluctant to raise a point of order because you kind of want a free flow, but it needs to be very explicit about what the member is asking that we consult on, because there is no decision for the council in relation to the decision to fluoridate. The question around reallocating capital expenditure, we've already heard that has to go either into an annual plan or a long-term plan change, and that will have to be consulted on. So I wasn't quite clear about what he was mentioning.
Yeah, so I was just trying to bring the PowerPoint back up, but there was that slide in the PowerPoint that says
I know what you're saying. Are you talking about, and through the chair, is he talking about consulting on the decision to fluoridate, which hasn't been made yet? We haven't received a direction, as you said right at the outset. Or is he talking about the decision to put more money on our capital budget if we are, because we've already been told we have to do that through an annual planning process, which is a requirement to consult. So I'm not clear.
I don't know. That's why I was trying to ask staff around the consultation, because when we get that phrase, that's why I was trying to ask staff what that actually means in terms of...
Okay, Yanni, look, we've got Ian Thompson here. He can step up, but I will say to you that really, I think there would be no appetite to consult because there's no point in it. but engagement is a different thing. We can engage. But Ian, if you're here, would you like to make a brief comment for Yanni?
Yes. Essentially, if the council resolved to consult, it could, but you'd have to weigh that against the circumstances that you're faced with here, whether or not there is any benefit in consulting. The Mayor has pointed out that we'll have to consult if we're adding considerable sums to our capital program through the LTP or the annual plan. I think it's too early to make any kind of conclusions as to whether or not we should or could consult. We'll need to look at that in light of what the Ministry of Health tell us that what we have to do.
Thank you. Right. Sam?
Yeah, mine's probably on the same vein as Leanne's.
Oh, Sam, you're a Dalek.
I'll just butt in.
We'll wait for you to come back.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hang on, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Pauline.
Okay.
Have we given any thought, and this fantastic report, and it's great because I can understand how the difficulties of putting fluoride into the many different water supply wells that we've got around town, and I can totally understand it. If we looked at the bigger picture, because you being elderly like myself, Pauline, will remember when your mother,
Thank you, Phil.
when your mother gave you the fluoride tabs way back in the day. If we're looking at it $63 million to implement it, and then the operating cost of 1.8 plus the renewal cost over 20 years is 1.1 a year, we're looking 63 to implement it, and then nearly 3 a year to operate it. Would we be better to actually, as a city, buy fluoride tabs and give them to schools for every kid? Because it's got to be cheaper than doing this, because it's only when you're young that you need the fluoride tabs. Once you get to, I don't know, I'm not an expert, I'll say 12, 14, you don't need them, but I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I'm trying to address in the resolution. We've asked the Crown to advise us what alternatives they've looked at, particularly for Christchurch, because we are a little bit unusual with our water supply being under pressure and having so many pump stations and equaling such a massive cost. So, I hope that they can give us a list of all the options that they've looked at, and if we can actually get a meeting with the Director General of Health to actually point out the differences in Christchurch. That's also in the resolution that we'll bring up in a minute. So Leanne and then Jimmy.
So I think that it might be helpful if staff explained in detail the steps that the legislation now requires. So the reason that, and this is my understanding from reading the paper, the reason that the Director General has, as he is entitled under the Act, to require information on both the costs of implementation and the timing of implementation is so that he can weigh up the costs and timing against the benefits of fluoridation. And once he's done that, then he makes the call. Now, as I understand it, there is no statement in the Act as to who pays. It doesn't say that the council has to, but it doesn't say that the Ministry of Health has to. So I think it's really important that councillors understand, and so I'm actually testing whether I've understood it, that there's a sequence of events that we have to go through first, that the Director General of Health has to consider, has to weigh up the scientific evidence around fluoridation and the question around tooth decay, etc. And then the second question is a cost-benefit analysis, which is why he's asked all of the councils that don't fluoridate how much it would cost and how long it would take, and any of the particular challenges that we have. And I presume that that's an iterative process. You're going to be in conversations with the Ministry of Health before the Director General comes to the point of making a call on that. And in the meantime, we want to have a very clear understanding of who would pay and whether they will be looking at the options. So I think they're the sort of kind of, if we can have it just a step through the process.
Thanks, Leanne. Who would like to take that on for comment, just to confirm Leanne's on the right track there? Is that you, Michelle?
I think Ian can also support, but yes, I think that is how I read the Act and how I understand it. At this stage, we're providing comments and we're providing the Director General with the costs and the implementation period. And we do need to have the Director General and his office coming back to us and have those discussions regarding what next.
Does that satisfy you, Leanne?
Well, I think that there does seem to be a bit of misunderstanding in just some of the questions that have already been asked about, you know, the different layers of the process that we're in. And so at some point, we're going to want to have some influence over who pays if the Director General is going to direct that this happen, because this would be the most substantial unfunded mandate ever. So that's why I want to get an explicit piece of advice on the sequencing of what we do when.
Okie doke. So shall we take that as an action from this meeting and request that in a memo? Right, I think we will. So have you got that, Andrew? Andrew Campbell noted that?
Yep.
Thank you. Right, Sam's back, and then we've got Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you. And it probably aligns with what Leanne was saying. So it may be something that can be picked up later. I'm just trying to understand, and it might be a question for Ian, potentially. So, you know, I completely get that there's restrictions on consultation over the directive from central government. I guess what I'm trying to understand is if we consulted in the long-term plan to reprioritise and the community came back overwhelmingly saying, actually, no, we want you to focus on the safe water as opposed to the fluoridation, what would happen? I mean, you know, we would have to take their views into account, but from a legal point of view, I imagine we'd still have to proceed with the fluoride, wouldn't we?
Well, that's entirely dependent on what the Director General directs us to do and whether or not the Crown is going to contribute to the cost. I really am not in a position to give you too much detail on that because I don't know enough about the subject, but I'm happy to come back to you with more detailed advice if you'd like.
It would just be good to understand, you know, if we are saying that we would consult, if we have to around budget changes, whether that consultation is actually relevant or not, because if it's a government directive, as Leanne said, an unfunded mandate, we may be sort of, I'd hate to be at the risk of sort of misleading the public or setting false expectations when actually we can't change it. So look, even if it's something you can take offline and maybe it'll be worked through over the coming months, but yeah, I would just hate to think that people think we could consult through the LTP if in fact we actually can't change that government directive and how we and our prioritisation of funding.
Yeah, it sounds awfully like familiar, like Three Waters reform, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, there's about 5 sort of central government takeovers at the moment, but you did right. Yeah.
I'm happy to come back with some more detailed advice around that.
Jimmy.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian. And then Tim.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the cost, because here total is $63 million, which consists of 2 parts, 44 operational pump station, 58, plus 5 the new pump station, 5 million. But I'm not sure, you also mentioned 30% contingency allowance and 12% escalation. Whether the $63 million is cover these 2 items or not. It's another additional, exclude or include?
That's all inclusive.
All include, okay, that's good. The other one is why the 5 new pump station, 5 million, so each new one is only 1 million. But the operation existing pump station, each one is 1.3. So I get lost. Why? Should be new one is more expensive. Why is it cheaper? I have no idea.
When we, I think sorry for confusing, when we build new pump stations, though we are able to build it to include already that extra room or that extra space that's needed. So it will effectively end up in being less costly for new pump stations. So we haven't costed to put in fluoridation into the pump stations that we are going to replace or are going to build new. There will be some cost efficiency in that by just designing those pump stations to already include fluoridation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Tim?
Thank you. I guess it's going back to Ian, the 61 or 63 or 65 million or whatever that it's estimated at, plus the ongoing costs of around 2 million, the operational costs. Is that something that we would have to consult on through a long-term plan because of the adjustments with regards to the budgets? I mean, Sam mentioned about one or the other with regards to safety of water or adding fluoride, which would be the priority. But it's actually, I don't think it's that question. I think it's adjusting our budget. So what would be the thought there if the government didn't come in and support us?
Yes, of course, that would be included in the capital program for an LTP, and that would be out for consultation. But as to the effectiveness of that, given any directions from the Crown, you'd have to wonder. But certainly you would want to include that in your capital program with the LTP, or if it was an annual plan year and required in the annual plan year, it would be a significant departure from the LTP, and you would have to consult on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, I can't see any more questions, so it'd be good to get the recommendations up. And Leanne, I'd like to invite you to comment on those because I don't think you'd seen them till just recently. So we've put in the number 1 remains the same. Number 2 is notes council is investing in a drinking water improvement program and has significant funds on budget in the LTP, but has no funds budgeted for fluoridation capital or operational costs. Notes fluoridation is a national health issue, and therefore if we are directed to fluoridate our drinking water supply, agrees the Crown should fund all costs. Number 4 instructs the Chief Executive to write to the Director General of Health requesting that before any decision is taken to instruct this council to fluoridate its water supply, request council sees all the alternative options considered to fluoridate children's teeth. 5, the Mayor invites the Director General of Health to meet and discuss the Christchurch situation. So I'd like to, Leanne, are you happy with those recommendations?
Well, the last one just, and I mean, I know that I think Sam pointed out by way of an email that that the Director General's just resigned, so that's why the reference to his individual name has changed. So the only thing is the timing of that. So as long as people are reasonably comfortable with just leaving this until we have some additional advice, you know, I'm happy for the resolution and I'll support all of the resolutions there. But I think that it might be useful just to be aware that this is not an immediate directive to me to invite the Director General of Health, because there is, just to use a phrase, a lot of water to go under the bridge yet before he will indicate whether we will receive the direction. And the direction, as I say, is not something that is negotiable. As we've heard, there are consequences for failure to comply. But of course, he has indicated publicly that directions won't be made till the middle of the year. He has also indicated that staging, as we've read in the paper, that staging of any directions is possible. And we've heard that in order for us to meet our community's priorities in terms of safe drinking water that is good to drink, then we require at least, well, it looks closer to 24 months to me before you'd even start the process of looking at the capital program. So, which would take us into another LTP period. And if the Crown came to the party accepting that this is a huge unfunded mandate to put on drinking water users for a health benefit that would otherwise be directed to the health system for funding. So, you see what I mean? Like there are just a few issues that need to be worked through. And so I'm happy to support it as it stands, as long as no council is going to ask me next month why I haven't written to the Director General of Health to ask to meet with him or her, whoever the next one is, before then.
Well, look, thanks, Leanne, and I'm happy to move these recommendations. And as the mover, I'm happy to leave that timing in your hands, because you're the best person to make a call on when that timing's right.
I'm happy to second it on that basis, and I'm happy that I will keep informing staff. So councillors, I'll keep councillors up to date with where I'm at. But I think that we need some advice from within the council, and possibly some external advice as well, in order to support our decision making going forward, what little there is under the circumstances, because I think this is going to require a substantial advocacy component as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we've got those actions noted in today's discussion. All right, so thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? And I can't see the screen. Is there any debate? Can we? No?
I'm happy to start. I'm happy to, because I would like to say a couple of things.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I was just struggling to find my hand again.
It's all right.
I think that the first thing I'd like to say is that thank you, a huge thank you to staff for going to all of this trouble to provide such a significant and transparent briefing so that the public can see the sequence of events that have occurred in relation to the passing of legislation that was passed by Parliament late last year. When I say Parliament, I know it's very quick for people to go, this is government. Every single political party in Parliament supported this. There was no division called. I was going to quote from speeches from all sides of the House supporting the underpinning of this legislation. But there was no turning of their minds to the funding of it, because I think there's been an assumption made that the water services provider, and in that instance it's us as the council, the water services provider will have one treatment plant, they'll be able to dose it up with fluoride, as many of the ones that currently fluoridate their water supplies, and distribute it from one treatment plant. That is not the case in Christchurch, and that's why we've ended up with what is an eye-watering cost of $63 million. And that is a trebling of the last time that this was assessed in 2017 by City Care. And we had a rough assessment then. This report that we've now provided to the Ministry of Health contains a lot more detail. And I just think staff have done an extraordinary job with everything else that's going on, with all the Three Waters reforms and all of the information that have been asked for from our staff in the same section. They have provided a detailed assessment that takes into account a much wider range of issues. And we've heard that the biggest component of the cost comes from the fact that we would have to provide individual treatment capacity at nearly 50 pressure pump statements, unlike other councils who take water from a single source and then treat it in a single plant before distributing it to households. And that's what we do in Akarawa. So, we know that experience, but it isn't our experience for the Christchurch Littleton water supply. The Director General has a legal obligation to weigh up the costs with the benefits, And these costs are huge. And he will or she will have to weigh this up against the alternative ways of distributing fluoride to those who are in need. And Phil Major raised the fact, well, I'm older, obviously, in that category, because I remember having fluoride tablets every single day as a child. And I remember knowing that all of my schoolmates got you know, at the murder house, at the dental clinic that we went to, they all got fillings. I didn't have a single filling when I left school, and that's the huge challenge that government has taken on. It's a health issue. The decisions made by a health official, these are health benefits, and that's where the funding should come from. That's just, it's not about water safety, and that's what we're on about. Our priority remains the delivery of demonstrably safe drinking water, and for us, that's also good to drink, hence our work towards gaining an exemption from chlorination. And I think that's where our drinking water funding is required under our long-term plan to be spent. That remains our priority, and what we need to do is advocate very strongly to central government that they have to pay the costs from the health budget, not from our council's ratepayers.
Leanne, that's brilliant. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few comments to add to the debate. One, you know, it just to me shows how completely out of touch the Ministry of Health is in terms of Christchurch and what we've been through over the last decade. The fact that we've had earthquakes, the fact that we've had the terror attacks, the fact that we've had floods, fires, we've had the pandemic, and yet they still continue to put our city under enormous pressure around our water infrastructure, both with the forced chlorination and now potentially the forced fluoridation. And it's just baffling to me that despite all the work that we've done around the drinking water and the water safety plans, that they're still asking basic questions about our water infrastructure in regards to fluoride, adding fluoride. Like, it just shows you, I think, that they are completely oblivious to the reality of what we've been through as a city for the past decade, and completely oblivious to the state of our infrastructure, that we have to spend so much time and resource answering their questions, when this is exactly the sort of stuff that should have been thought about ahead of whatever's been proposed to go through Parliament, and certainly in terms of any decisions being made where we are going to have to face the consequences as a city. So I totally support the recommendations that have been put forward. It is unbelievable that we're in this situation, and hopefully we can get a face-to-face meeting with the DG to explain the frustration of what we've been put through by the Ministry of Health.
All right, if no one else has got anything to say, like, I totally support your comments, Yanni, and of course Leanne's put it very succinctly and in a detailed way as well. Imagine if we passed what is the equivalent of a bill without looking at the financial implications. We obviously do things very differently in our council, but we have gone through a heck of a lot throughout the last 10 years or 12 years at the council, and particularly since 2013, I feel for Leanne as our leader, what she has carried us through. It's incredible what we have sustained as a city. And every single event, like the earthquakes, the fires, the floods, the pandemic, the mosque attacks, they've had huge, not just personal costs, but financial implications on this council. And we've carried that load all the time, keeping our rates rises at what I believe is a very sustainable level. And I just think I'd like to recognise Leanne's efforts there as leading us through that. It is absolutely massive what you've carried us through. And I just want to say that at this stage. And to have this being imposed on us with this massive cost, this gobsmackingly eye-watering cost, all I can say is I really hope the Director General treats us differently. We are different, very different in our water supply, and actually looks at that cost and perhaps looks very closely at other alternatives. And I'll be very interested in that response to see what other alternatives they have actually entertained. we are obliged to put up options when we put anything out, a new project or anything out for a proposal. We don't see any options in here, and I would like to see some options. So that's all I'll have to say on that matter. And I support the recommendation, and on that note, I'll put the recommendation. So please wave if you support it. And any opposed? No. Okay, all those in favour say aye. We have. I'll pass that recommendation. And I'll now invite Councillor Templeton to close with a karakia, please.
Sorry, just finding my new button there. Unuhia te pau whiri marama. Tomokia te ao whatu tangata. Tātai ki runga, tātai ki raro, tātai aho rau. Homi e, hui e, taiki e.
Kia ora. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, everyone. That was a really good and really interesting meeting, I thought, personally. We